Education people or just,
They were just,
suburban special?
they were special ed boys in Bryn Mawr. So they were football players.
Or broaden the brain.
Minorities. If you're a minority on the main line, your chances of ending up in a special ed classroom are
Who doesn't celebrate?
really high.
No,
Or didn't go to preschool. Usually I taught grades 3 to 5 was my favorite, but there were a few times I ended up with,
Recording in progress.
when you're made my principal really angry, I ended up with first, third, and fourth grade, and there were 3 teachers. I ended up with 3 out of 5 grades.
Better get our bylaws up and see what's happening. Did we have any?
That was when I was the union rep.
Did we know that we had a possible forum issue?
And that was just in my school system.
It was Haverford School District. It was the number one elementary school in the state of Pennsylvania. It was Coopertown Elementary.
That's right, so you got our subdivision ordinance.
Or we were the highest scored. It's lovely, that's where we used to live. We lived over on the other side of Haverford College, like Marion Golf, or by the golf club over that way.
Julie, can you set it up so that screens
I
can
have
be
a cousin
shared,
who
so
lives in
Diana
Swap.
can share her screen?
That's closer to where I grew up.
Isn't that connected?
Let me just take.
I grew up right in between the two of them.
I mean, it's. Exclamation mark, and just like.
And I definitely wanted the city life, so I went to Temple. I wanted to get NYU, but my father knew better.
And again, I know like the city hall Wi-Fi was being.
Probably would have had a good time.
It doesn't all connect.
I hung out there
Unless
anyway
they
when I
just
was at
recently
Temple.
changed it.
So when I found out you could take the train up to see shows and
Monday night.
things.
Mine's working, so I haven't updated password, so
But cities come most of the time
We need to get Nancy Stacey up. She's going to
in the dorm.
come in on Zoom.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, move her to the panel, please.
And then there might be, Rich Innes, or Richard Innes, and then Jonathan Sharp. You're gonna wanna check for those, please. Yeah,
Bob was our movie star up there, my God. Jesus.
Yeah.
he's alone.
And I
Screen
know,
hog.
and I would have combed my hair.
Here's
Oh, no,
Nancy.
Nancy's got the
Yeah,
good
just jumped in.
background.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, I'm calling the Lewis Planning Commission meeting to order. We have a quorum because Nancy Stacey has joined us on Zoom. So we have 5 members of the Planning Commission here. Okay, any announcements from anyone? Okay, so let's move to unfinished business then. Discussion and possible recommendation to Mayor and City Council regarding Ordinance 4-22, an ordinance to repeal and replace in its entirety Chapter 170, the Subdivision and Land Development Code, and portions of Chapter 197 of zoning that reference Chapter 170. Okay. Nancy, did you want to present anything?
I just wanted to say, I think people are aware that we had a very well-attended workshop on this and got lots of input that was used in fine-tuning things, and then had a public hearing with some positive comments, but not much further feedback. I have to say, in the last little while, as I've read this over a million times, as I know the other members of the subcommittee have, One more thing did occur to me, and I don't know whether you'd like me to bring this up now, or shall we wait for general comments from the rest of the members of the Planning Commission?
Oh, well, since you're speaking, why don't you go ahead and bring it up?
Okay. One of the things that we spent a lot of time on was open space and buffers. And while I think as we were doing this, we were conceiving that that residential buffers would be included in the open space, and in that way would be owned by the HOA. I don't believe that we made this explicit enough. And so I'm suggesting that between pages 49 and 50, around line 2180, we insert a fourth sub-bullet that would say, residential buffers shall be included in open space and shall not be located on individual lots. And the thinking behind
What
this,
page did you
as
say?
we talked,
Line 2980. It's line.
2180.
It's a proposed
21.
amendment, so it's not actually in the version
It's
you
not in
have.
there. I'm just suggesting where it would get inserted. Get inserted. If you go to page 49, let me pull this up. On page 49, we're dealing with open space. And under residential, under F sub-bullet 1B reads, residential area buffers shall provide a minimum 30-foot vegetated buffer along the shared property line, meeting one of the following standards. And I'm suggesting that one of the standards shall be, I guess actually we have to be careful there, because this would be, we would want this generally to be met, not just if you meet this one, you've met it. I'm suggesting that those residential buffers should be included in the open space and not located on individual lots.
Thank you
think we're-
for bringing that up, Nancy.
Yes, I think that's a good amendment.
I have one further question on that. I guess if it's on open space, then it automatically falls under the purview for maintenance of the HOA.
Correct.
Correct.
Is there anything we need beside buffers, plantings, berms, throwing that out to the group?
Landscaping?
Well, I thought the buffer might take the form of a berm or a planted area. I mean, I think there are a lot of different formats for the buffer. Janelle, do you have any advice on this?
I think right now, I think you've covered, most everything I think we could think of for inclusion in there. I know this one was just specifically about the residential area buffers, but I know we talk about the corridor buffers and the residential buffers and the overall buffers, and I think it's pretty well covered. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd want to include.
Actually, looking at this, I would think this sentence that I'm proposing should be included as part of B, because it would cover all of them. The buffer, it's to be on, part of the open space, because Deborah, thinking of your comments under B, it goes through the different options, a rolling berm, a wall, a planting strip, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's all covered. I think what we're just now is making it explicitly clear that, the buffer and whatever goes in the buffer has to be in open space and cannot be on an individual residential lot.
But for the sentence what I would suggest is that sentence be part of B on page 49, at line 2170 and 71.
Okay, any other comments on that issue? Do we have any members of the public who want to speak to this or have any comments in chat?
So you left the record open until, I think, a couple weeks ago, and we haven't received any comments, haven't been submitted regarding this ordinance, but if you want to double check and see if anybody online, I just want to make sure you knew, I haven't received any comments, that's why there were no comments submitted as part of the packet, because we haven't received any.
And also, just to add, is that we received, I think everybody knows this, but many, many comments after the public workshop. And we sat on the committee, many of us here, and went through them one by one and addressed them and included a lot of the suggestions.
I mean, we actually received 99 comments that we went through, so it was a lot.
It took more than one meeting.
Right. But they were very helpful.
Good, good. Okay, how about other members of the commission? Any issues, any comments? Okay, because I have a couple of nitpicking issues. Okay, in the definitions on lot coverage, should we make it more explicit that coverage includes decks and patios and walkways?
Can you, which page and line are you on?
I'm sorry, I don't have the page, I just have that it's in the definitions under lot
Line
coverage.
300 on page 7.
Okay, give me just a minute, because I think.
Yeah, this would be page 7, and the real definition is on 8.
Right.
Okay,
Are you talking
Give me
first
just a
floor
minute, because I want to make
decks or
sure
second
that's
floor
not a
decks?
conflict
Doesn't matter.
with.
Doesn't
Um,
matter.
I think the key thing there would be, we say it's the percentage of a lot which is covered or planned to be covered with impervious surfaces. So you were suggesting that we could include decks and walkways. The concern would be
And
some
patios. Yes,
walkways and patios could be pervious.
so can driveways, but it's not very frequent. Yes,
Thank you.
Tim,
Wouldn't
can
it
you
be
use the mic?
I'm sorry, wouldn't it be appropriate to also include swimming pools in that category?
isn't that defined there now?
It's not included in that definition.
Yeah, I
I
think,
thought I saw it somewhere.
Okay,
just to
so-
clarify, I think swimming pools are impervious.
Yes,
Correct.
So anything that is impervious, because I guess our thought was, we couldn't really think of everything that's impervious. The question then is, why are driveways there?
So-
You know,
And what I would suggest is this actually is consistent with the definition that is in chapter 197. So that's
I
where
see.
that came from. It's the same definition of lot coverage that's actually in the zoning code.
and that's the one that includes pools and.
No, and I'm gonna read it. The lot coverage is the percentage of the lot which is covered or planned to be covered with impervious surfaces. Lot coverage shall include off-street parking areas, and driveways, but not public streets. So it's literally the same definition. All we did was copy and paste it so there would be consistency throughout. So I think if you're gonna change one, you need to change both, so there's the same definition for both.
and I think the thinking was that a patio, walkway, a swimming pool, unless the swimming pool was like a natural pond that, it isn't impervious. Those are all covered under this.
197 also includes a definition of impervious cover. I think that may be the difference, where impervious cover is specifically defined. I think part of the reason it says lot coverage includes your driveways is because even if it's a pervious surface, if it's a driveway, it's considered impervious because of the weight of the vehicle.
I see.
Am I right, Charlie, or?
Weight of the vehicle?
There's compaction that when it,
That over time,
Right.
it will be.
But you can have driveways that are pervious, like poured concrete pervious, asphalt pervious, paving block pervious.
So,
That is, got a proper underlayment for storage and infiltration.
so what I would,
So driveways, driveways in general, if they have to be engineered to be pervious, otherwise they're impervious. And just to back up, Melanie's comment on patios or porches and decks. When we had done a survey of many other communities, in general, anything under shadow, under eave line, under deck cover, is considered to be impervious because the water runs off the deck is typically pitched, and the ground underneath it is not necessarily, it doesn't have grass or other sources. So almost every community that we surveyed had under deck area as impervious.
so what I would suggest, because the definition in 197 is not part of this ordinance, that it sounds like there's a lot that could happen to this definition. Maybe we table that, and I know there's a lot of other definitions that I know we've wanted to look at. Maybe we put that in one of the definition categories as a separate ordinance, and we take a deeper dive into what the definition should be instead of trying to discuss and figure it out tonight. So that way everybody we can put together, we can do some research, see what others have. Because I think there's some great ideas coming out of here, and I think that the best thing is come back and revise the definition of lot coverage in both places at a later time. Because I think that just be a little bit cleaner.
Would it, if anyone has it handy, I do not have my big binder. Does anyone have the definition from chapter 197?
Yeah, I just read it, and it's
Okay,
the exact same that we just
Yeah.
copied and pasted it, because that's what we did. We wanted, we needed to take some of the definitions and put them in the subdivision code,
Right.
and we just made sure they matched 197.
Now, when we were working on this, I mean, one reason why we were matching it to 197 is because the definition of impervious was being looked at for revision. And we didn't want to have two separate subcommittees, different folks trying to redefine the same thing and just have one group really focus on that. Where do we stand, Janelle, in terms of a revision to the definition or clarification of the definition of impervious?
That's currently not on the table, so I think the suggestion that maybe we come back and take a deeper dive and look at the definition of lot coverage would be a good route to take, because again, that definition of impervious surface has been put on hold, and as has the definition of pervious surface. So those have been both put on hold. So I think if we're going to take a holistic approach and look at them all, I think we'd look at all of them together, so they're all consistent.
And who put it, did city council put it on hold, or how did it go on hold?
That would have been from city council as we move forward. And it was also something we'd heard from some members of the public as we were working through another ordinance. So we thought we'd put that on hold, address that one ordinance, and then, we can come back and take a deeper dive and do some some additional research.
Well, I think it's important that it be very clear to everyone what we mean by impervious and pervious.
Yeah, that's where I kind of maybe disagree and go back to what Nancy was saying, is that you just say impervious, and once the plan is submitted, you figure out what the impervious is. Because if you try to identify every single thing that might or may not be impervious, you're going to have this long list, and it's not going to be totally inclusive of everything. And some of those things that you have on the list, like a deck, could actually be designed to be pervious. So I think the way it's written is it just says impervious surfaces, and then it's up to the planning commission and staff to figure out what part of that is impervious. The part that's confusing, I think, is it says shall include all street parking areas and driveways, but along the lines of what you were saying, Anne Marie, I think that was put in there for the specific purpose of identifying driveways and parking areas as being included in lot coverage, because in the past, maybe they weren't.
Yeah, I think also because driveways are often covered with vehicles.
And
you know,
his,
that comes into play too. I mean, my suggestion would be, because I have to say, when we were looking at this, we thought that a clarified definition of pervious and impervious was close at hand. This is currently consistent with Chapter 197, and I don't think we'd want to have something different in this in 179. So my suggestion would be we go forward with it as it is, but I think we should be making a suggestion to City Council that this definition of pervious and impervious be worked on as soon as possible.
Can I also add it's a semantics issue? I'm seeing it less and less, but I have seen people who, at the county level and here in the city, referring to and making mistakes with reversing pervious and impervious. And it would be really nice to come up with a synonym that means impervious and a synonym for pervious to really clarify it for people. And I know, Anne-Marie, the look on your face, you're laughing. But it's true. I can remember sitting in a meeting and hearing someone say that it was better to have whatever pervious because it got down to the storm drain quicker. I don't remember what it was, but it was clearly a semantics error at play. So just tossing that out there when we.
I know, I agree that
So
it's.
maybe if more of us hear that idea, one of us will remember it.
Well, maybe we say permeable pavement, you know,
Yeah.
as opposed to impervious.
And not permeable to liquids or water, whatever.
We really need to challenge ourselves and come up with some words that are not just opposite with, a suffix added.
My concern is that, I understand what it means, and Charlie understands what it means. The problem is, does Joe homeowner understand what it means?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and he says, oh, okay, so my driveway counts, but I'm gonna build a deck, I'm gonna build a pool, I'm gonna build a patio, and, that'll be fine. But in reality, it needs to be explicit somewhere, I think, for the average person, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with you, Melanie. Now, hopefully, because we now have this is for the subdivision, not for individual homeowners, and there would be a meeting at the beginning where one of the things we're adding in, because there have been some confusions early on by folks, where we've, have this initial meeting to go over everything. So that would be clarified up front, hopefully.
Okay.
and typically when somebody comes in for a building permit, we kind of have that conversation and the building officials have that conversation, go, okay, that's going to count towards your lot coverage, that's not going to count towards your lot coverage. So we do try to work with the public as well.
But the more that we write out, the less that you have to do that, too. Not, even though it is your job. It takes out the gray area.
It may be written, but nobody's going to read it, though.
Yeah, they have a point there, Joe.
Other problem, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, to Deborah's point, lot coverage can have a different interpretation than pervious and impervious. Because, lot coverage is things that you built on regardless. Now, the intent of the code is that they're synonyms, but we actually use different words once again. We use lot coverage to synonymous with impervious. Did I get that right?
Yes.
And it's part of when we did the review of definitions, there's a lot of cleanup that needs to get done in the definition section.
Okay. My next point goes into the landscape area. The protection of existing trees, I think, should be a little more explicit.
Do you know what page, excuse me?
I'm sorry, I don't.
How about a number of page?
I can give you the page, give me just 1 second here. Landscape begins on
170-26?
page 46 to 56 is landscaping.
And this is towards the end.
Yes, page 46 to 56.
Thank you.
And my suggestions there are that there be no excavation within the limit of the drip line of the canopy, that sediment control fencing be installed at the drip line, and that the storage of materials or vehicles is prohibited within the area.
Say those again?
That there be no excavation within the limits of the drip line of the canopy, and that sediment control fencing be installed at the drip line, and that no storage of materials or vehicles be within the protection area.
Do you have a specific spot you would be inserting this? I'm just trying to see where it would, the right place to fit that in if we're moving forward with it.
Okay, I thought there was a section that was the protection of trees to remain. Maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I'm adding that at the end.
Yeah, there is a,
What you may be doing is encouraging somebody to clear cut their lot rather than jumping through hoops to reserve and, save a tree.
I thought you addressed that as well.
Well, there's a subdivision near me that was evidently contentiously approved,
I know.
and trees were to be saved on the lots. And what I have observed is most of the trees have been removed willy-nilly, and that those that are on home sites, there is storage of topsoil, there are cars parked, there is material storage of all kinds. Those trees are not going to survive. Even though the homeowners probably said, I want that tree on my lot. Well, it's not going to happen,
Be there.
So I really think we need to specify how they're going to be protected.
Melanie, can I make a suggestion, a friendly suggestion? I'm familiar with the idea of using a fence around the drip line of a tree. I think it would be helpful if you included that the fence has to be installed at the time the development starts, not 30 days or 60 days later, but at the time the shovel.
Absolutely.
And I think that needs to be explicit.
Yes,
It can, and it should not be available for interpretation.
yes,
That's a friendly suggestion.
yes.
So should it be installed construction fencing? Because it wouldn't be a
Well, it's
permanent
the sediment
fencing.
control fencing, 'cause
Silt
it's
fencing.
right
Sediment
on-
control fencing,
Silt
okay.
fencing.
So no one can say, I can see it, It's
Correct.
bright orange.
Yes,
I may
okay.
make a recommendation. The problem
Okay.
with sediment control fencing is that it's low,
Correct.
it's mostly black, and it can get backed over by trucks. That more typical for tree protection, it's snow fencing.
Yeah, flexible.
Or the flexible type that they use. But it could be, what you could specify is orange, a bright color, and that's used frequently too, standing out to address Tom's
Yeah.
issue.
I would suggest we consider, a recommendation or amendment to put this in on page 51, just after, in line 2263, where we're talking about the protection of existing trees.
Okay.
And I would also note, some of that is actually not really related to the subdivision, it's related
Yeah.
to the construction of the subdivision, which is not something we typically address in the subdivision code. The subdivision code is really how things are supposed to eventually look. I'm just trying to think, because I completely agree, we need to, how do we protect the trees so they don't die?
I also agree, I mean, I agree in terms of the concern
I'm just
about
trying to figure
protecting trees. One thing that we did discuss and, you know, you have to keep in mind, we're talking about the subdivision code here, not the zoning code, and the general building code. And I think one of the things that we, as a planning commission, may want to set as a priority or recommend is that we have a subcommittee that really looks into a general kind of tree ordinance. Because we're, you know, typically when you look at codes, that's something that cuts across a variety of areas.
Yeah,
and
'cause-
sets the standards.
Well, I think, though, that it's the subdivision and land development code. And I think this falls under land development. So I don't think, because you're subdividing, you would not notice this or it shouldn't be included there. I think it is part of this code.
No, I'm just thinking it's,
I'm not arguing with that.
No.
And I don't think Janelle was either. I'm just saying that I think we found the right spot to put it in.
Okay.
But I think there is a broader, bigger issue about trees that we should consider more fully in the future.
I think wholeheartedly.
I totally agree with you, but yeah.
And that is something that, as we discuss landscaping and trees, came up again and again, and has come up in planning commission again and again, because, you know, it's important to point out that, again, which you all know, this is only going to apply to a major subdivision. So we need to get a tree ordinance. And I know that's been something that's been discussed, but how do we start with that?
so there is chapter 177, which is trees in the city code. So maybe it's taking a look at that, and then when there's construction and there's construction where there are trees that need to be protected, maybe we start looking at that section of like, how do we take a bigger, because there's an entire chapter, 177, called trees. The purpose is to define and establish responsibility authority for the management of the city's urban forest by the Parks and Rec Commission. Its jurisdiction is intended for public trees, not those on private lands. But I think we can also make some changes that there are sections in this chapter that would impact homeowners associations, and then the construction of trees, and then the maintenance and responsibility of, you know, landscape buffers, corridor buffers, and other buffers for the entirety of any type of development that happens throughout.
Well, we're talking about the subdivision code today
And land development.
and land development. And it seemed to me like an early step in this process would be go out and do almost an inventory of trees and say, these are staying. And, you know, if they aren't, you have to replace like size, like variety, you know, with some enforcement power. And maybe, as was suggested in something last week, you have to replace it 2-to-1 if you mess up versus the original inventory planned. And
Well,
as everybody knows, large trees are expensive. So, you know, the penalty of having to replace, you know, a large tree is considerable. And if you have to replace it 2-to-1, you're getting somewhere. But I think a step that fits in here is probably at the preliminary review before first shovel, somebody's gone out there and said, this is a specimen, or that's a specimen, or whatever. And of this little grove, we want, you know, 3/4 of it to remain, or whatever somebody with a great deal more knowledge of trees has than I do, but.
And absolutely, and that does happen in certain instances. There's a couple of subdivisions that this body and the council have approved where it's, it's called, it's SAP on the plans, it's the special area of protection, and you'll see that around a group of trees or a specimen tree, that they will actually, and it goes out beyond just the canopy of the tree sometimes, to protect that, so when there is construction, they do protect that. It doesn't always happen on like all the trees, but usually on those trees that you have mentioned, Mr. Heffernan, we do try to make sure they're keeping track of those and protecting those. So I like that. That's a good idea that we can maybe be a little bit more
I think that really
enforcement
leads
about
to what Nancy was suggesting.
And that's something that we, you know, I think you're absolutely bang on that. That's something that we looked at and that is included in terms of the guidelines, and so can be set as a condition. I guess what I'm saying is separate from all of this. I think this needs to be, you know, I think there is something that we should be adding along the lines of what you just outlined, Melanie. But I think, I guess, you know, one of my suggestions, and we talked about this in our subcommittee, is possibly having our committee meet again, just to make a list of the things that came up that were in other sections of the code, that possibly are things that should be looked at in more detail. And a total tree ordinance would be one of those. But there are others also.
Right. Yeah, I think there was a nice hefty list of things we wanted to tackle, but they didn't unfortunately fall exactly within the subdivision code. They fell better into like the zoning ordinance or one of the other chapters, because the subcommittee did a wonderful dive and researched.
Nancy, we're gonna be sure to invite Parks and Recreation, maybe Marty Thompson, somebody,
Yes.
or one or two others to sit in on this.
Yeah.
Because that tree section, that's their baby, you know.
Yeah. And we got quite an education on trees in speaking with them, so.
Okay, and then my final point is in section 170.26, where we're talking about plans coming to the commission for review. There is, oh, I'm sorry.
And can I just interject for folks, this is on pages 40 to 58.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, no, it's 170.19, I'm sorry, where we're talking, as I said, about plans coming to the commission for review. And
That's page 20 to 27. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Melanie. I just wanted to keep people on board with being
Thank
able
you.
to find.
I appreciate it. And in that section, under C1F, the planner says the application complies with the code. And my concern is that if the application complies with the code, there's an implication that it must be approved by the planning commission. And could that language be changed to something that said that the application is complete and has provided sufficient information for the planning commission to review? So there is not then the implication that it is entirely in conformance with the code.
I'm gonna look at the attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly know that, I share the concern. I think we're trying to balance two things here. One, of course, is I've seen many instances where a plan gets to a planning commission and there's obvious code compliance issues that should have been taken care of before it ever made it to you. So I think there's inherent in this is there's a duty of staff to try and work with the developer to get them to a point that they've basically got a code compliant plan before it gets to you, or something that looks like a code compliant plan. But I agree with you, if you've got a city official saying the plan is code compliant, we've preached over and over and over that a code compliant plan needs to be approved with conditions, if there are conditions. So that implication is certainly there. You know, you could perhaps write it in the negative. I've never seen it done this way, but you could write it, sort of once the planner is unable to identify any any additional code compliance issues or something like that. So there's still a little bit of a door that says they haven't identified anymore that might be there. You know, so I don't know what the right way to write it, to do it is, but have you ever seen anything like that, Anne Marie or Janelle, that kind of a?
No, because typically, I mean, even at this stage, because this is the preliminary, it's not gonna be 100% in compliance. They're gonna have, you know, like what Charlie and I do is review the plans. And I always call it, if there's something in bold, that's my danger, Will Robinson. You've got to fix that, because that is like, I'm not letting that get to here, because like a lot size doesn't meet something, or there's clearly something that a massive code compliance, the issue that does not meet code, or they need a waiver for that they haven't submitted for. But sometimes it's like, you know, they forgot to put the floodplain information on, you know, there's the miscount of a tree or two, which happens, you know. I reviewed a plan today, it's already been approved through the public process, and like, well, your trees still don't add up, so, they're, you know, non-critical items that typically get identified through the process of things they have to clean up. So typically, it's always, you know, somebody saying, hey, it's good to go, it's ready for review by the planning commission.
And could you say something though, like, once the city planner verifies the application is complete and in a form, something like in a form sufficient for planning commission review, or something like that, just to say like, because then the planner has the opportunity to say, you're not in sufficient form for planning commission review yet, while they're trying to work through those code things, but you're not saying, to Melanie's point, this thing is code compliant.
You also have to
So-
let the applicant know that the planning commission may still add some conditions as it's ongoing too.
Oh, yeah, no, that's still in here, because again, we're
Okay,
just
I
getting,
want to be sure the,
this is like, you know, okay, they submit an application, staff's gonna review it, includes Charlie,
yeah,
BPW, other agencies, and we're going, okay, now it can be moved forward. So what if you wanted to do, once the city planner verifies, the plan is sufficient for planning commission review,
yeah.
they will. So that would be a change to 904,
Yeah.
which is the line
Yeah,
item on
just to let
page
them know we don't
22.
have rubber stamps here.
Yeah.
Right.
We have
So-
our 2 cents to add.
I just want to say that, you know, that line F is just a precursor to number 1, which says that once the application in the way it's worded now complies with code, that's when the planner will notify Parks and Recreation, staff, the Board of Public Works, so that they can actually begin their review. Nobody's ever going to figure that they're going to go through that whole review process, and their plan as it was submitted won't have any comments. I do think you can revise the language to be a little clearer though, but I don't know that it's prepped for even planning commission review at that point.
Yeah, that's really like the very initial stage. It's like, so.
But
how
is
would you
the
say-
concern in terms of Melanie's proposed language, like, I agree, I think where we say verifies that it complies with the code implies, it's saying it complies.
Right.
And is the problem with the language Melanie's providing, that it would enable someone to argue they want to move on to the next stage when there are, you know, glaring, obvious issues that need to be addressed?
What if we took out the word complies and something
Consistent?
even is
Sufficient?
consistent with minimum standards?
Well, I wouldn't even want to put the minimum saying, like, it's consistent, because that still gives it flexibility.
That got us in a lot of trouble before.
Could you repeat the language you proposed, Melanie?
Yes. Change it to, the application is complete and has provided sufficient information for Lewis Planning Commission review.
I mean, I would wonder if it shouldn't just say, the city planner verifies that the application provides sufficient information consistent with the code and is ready for, you know, further
because-
review by, and
Actually,
then.
how about as
Great.
required by the code? That takes all the value judgment out of it.
I wish there was like a checklist.
Well, again, the applications, well, unless we say it complies with the application checklist. But
Yeah.
again, this is just
Yeah,
And
that
that
would be
takes
fine.
care of that, so we'll
That's
just,
good.
so we can just do, verifies the application complies with the application checklist.
You
Yeah,
know, yeah, because that takes the,
Yep.
it meets the code, doesn't meet the code right out of it, and application checklist, to me, just says, okay, you've done the basic,
Yeah,
whatever.
because again, this is just,
Yeah.
this is the very initial step. It's like, hey, it's coming in, I'm going, yep, yep, yep. So then they can actually even get to RPC, which is a step before they can even get here.
right.
And can proceed to the next step?
Well, 'cause no,
Or
it
to the
already
next
says-
review?
No, because right now, sorry, I didn't mean to say no, because once it says,
You
the
can say no,
city
it's
planner
okay.
verifies the application complies with the application checklist, they will notify Parks and Rec, they'll post the property, we'll get all the information, be added for a upcoming planning commission meeting. So this is how far early we are in the process. Does that work?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Next review
I've
stage,
got-
I just want
got
to
9 heads.
somehow, repeat that there's a lot of reviews here.
Oh, there'll be a lot of,
Endless.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word preliminary.
no, this is like even before
Right.
yeah,
Which line are you on?
904.
904.
It's hard not being in the room, but I guess I'd like to see if Melanie and Glenn are in agreement with.
Yeah, I am. I mean, my only concern again is like, I don't want an applicant though to be able to say, I'm compliant with the checklist, but there's glaring errors in the design and not have the planner have an opportunity to, I could see a developer saying, you must advance my application to these other agency reviews because I meet the checklist. But if you meet the checklist, but your plan that has all kinds of glaring problems, I would like there to be an opportunity, for internal staff to say, your lot sizes are too big, you don't have this buffer, rather than it come here again, and there be these glaring errors, and you guys have to spend 10 hours getting an application in a form that you can actually review it. So that's why I kind of like saying something along the lines of, I'm fine if you say that it complies with the application checklist, but then I would still say, and is in sufficient form for further review.
I'm okay with that.
I would,
Yeah.
I have just a little bit of trouble with the word complete, but it sounds like in that last iteration, Glenn, that wasn't in there. I think if we said that it is complete, someone could then argue, well, you said my application is complete, and then if we require them to have something
How
additional.
about sufficient?
So the way I'm hearing it now is, once the city planner verifies the application, complies with the application checklist and is in sufficient form for further review, they will.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's good.
I think it's
I've got a
very,
lot of nodding heads, so I'm going with
Yeah.
that one.
I think it's very important that you basically have that stated that further review. I think as Charlie pointed out,
Yeah.
there are going to be individual cases that have to have individual analysis,
Oh, yeah.
not just a checklist.
Oh, no, this is just for submitting the application.
Right, no, but I
'cause then
think it
there's
has
the
to be-
whole staff report we have to do, and then it comes to RPC, and it comes to here, and, yeah, there's a lot of,
I just think it's important not to make it look too much like it's a checklist and they've done what they need to do.
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. Anything else, Melanie?
Yeah. The last one has to do with corridor buffers, which is in 170.26 D, I'm sorry. So, the corridor buffers are,
Page 46 to 56.
okay. As I read it, they're applicable to Pilot Town, Savannah, and King. Is that correct?
So the corridor buffers are marked as the ones that are in the historic Lewis byway, so it's New Road, Pilot Town, Front Street, Savannah, Kings, Gills Neck, and Cape Henlopen Drive.
Okay, and so a new subdivision would have to set back the dimensions that are
They would have to
included in the
comply
buffer.
with this section of code, yes.
Wouldn't
they're
that be
located on the road.
inconsistent with the existing homes on those streets, like particularly Pilot Town Road and Savannah? The houses are close to the street. Do we really want a new subdivision to be set way back, so far back?
So this is actually existing code that we're just bringing back. This is how the corridor buffer currently reads. So, and the 75 feet wasn't an actual, it was like an option if they didn't do one of the other things. Because if, where there are no established, we're on, on page 50, we're in, at the very top of the page, line 2181. So if there are no established individual lots, which there's going to be, a 75-foot buffer is required, measured from the applicable right-of-way. Where individual lots are established, there's a 60-foot buffer. Where there's a street between the structure and the corridor road, the 60-foot buffer. But then the buffer treatment is within the required buffer. They're provided to have a 25-foot buffer. So if you want to reduce that, just let us know what we can.
Well, it's interesting too, because to Melanie's point there, in all the other setbacks, it's setback or EBL. And, you know,
So
if you're building on, you know, a frontage that has buildings on it, you wouldn't want this jog that
Right.
just disrupts the street.
Exactly.
So maybe borrowing from the other setback language.
Or you could apply for a waiver.
right, again, everything in here, in this, so an applicant can ask for a waiver from. So that gives the commission actually discretion, which you might, but that's actually legal discretion that you can use, because they'll make a case going, well, this doesn't make sense, this would be out of character. So they would ask for relief from that.
Yeah, but do you want to, would you want them to build back further,
Right,
to have large front yards when everything else is 15 foot from the road?
right.
You know, I mean, from a consistency perspective,
Exactly.
that's the.
Again, the
interest
house
of
isn't
the-
built there, that's where the buffer's going. So you're, typically, you're putting, the corner, you're putting a 25-foot buffer, and then, you know, typically, the closest the house is gonna get is about 45 feet from the back of the house to the road, because you've got a 25-foot buffer, and then typically you have a 15-foot rear yard setback.
Well, and now the buffer has to be in open space.
The buffer, the corridor buffers that I've always seen have been in open space.
It just
They're
seems
not on
very
individual lots.
inconsistent with the look of those streets.
Yep, so if you have a suggestion and want to reduce that, just, we're here to make that
Existing
change.
building line. Go with that.
Yeah.
Give the option either way.
Keep in mind, we're talking about I mean, this isn't like an individual lot, this is a subdivision, this is,
Yeah, Nancy, we may have a subdivision down at the end of Powelltown Road where
True.
the Lewis Dairy used to be. That may pop up and be subdivided at some point.
which is adjacent to fairly open space. I mean, it almost would be a transition, wouldn't it?
Well, for the campus there, yeah, but they have existing
Yeah.
buildings as you face it are to the left, which are fairly close to the road.
Except, what we don't know, just, you know, hypothetically, is in that situation, I would assume there's going to be a road, and the frontage will be on the new road. That would be back in, not on Pilottown Road. And then also, we have historic homes right there, because we have the, I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name, but the historic home that's just been renovated, and that has an. Fisher's Paradise, pardon me. And that has, that's pretty, set up pretty close to the road. Several of the homes there are.
That's fairly well set back, I thought, that house.
Is the porch?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, there's one.
There's a variety
there's one
though along
couple
that
down
strip.
that's much closer to the
I
road.
mean,
right.
Yeah, there's a variety of
Variety,
homes across that,
yeah.
along that strip
Yeah.
though.
So do you want to keep this section? Do you want to reduce the definitions? Do you want to leave it with the ability to do waivers? What are you guys thinking?
Well, I would like to eliminate at least Pilottown and Savannah from the list.
See, I think that the waivers give flexibility for the commission to do that. I think it's hard to set the rule, I mean, as much as we'd like to have clarity in the rules, that flexibility, I think, is useful at times.
To give us some discretion on that.
Well, I just think of those two roads, and I just can't see why they need a buffer.
Again, I think it's because they've been identified as being part of the historic Lewis Byway.
I
And that-
understand. but-
That is why I think all the roads were included, but if you want to remove Pilot Town Road and Savannah Road, that can be to amend line 2182 and 2183 to remove those streets, then that would just be part of a motion for a recommendation.
I have a question, though. If we remove those streets, would and removed the buffer, would we, in fact, possibly open up more lots and higher density?
You're not gonna increase higher density because the lot size is gonna be the lot size.
Rolls out.
And I'm just trying to think, there's not a whole lot of
When that
land
open
left
space in
on
the,
Savannah for a major subdivision. I'm trying to think.
No, unless there's major tear downs, it would have to
Right,
be.
and I think there's only one, maybe two on Pilot Town, but they're also not gonna be like huge subdivisions. They're gonna be, a dozen or less for a major subdivision. So I think, if you wanna remove them, that's up to you guys.
What you might end up with, to Deborah's point, is you've got a road going into the old dairy site. If you eliminate the corridor buffer, you might have the side of a house close to Town Road without the corridor buffer because it has to face the street that goes into the development. I mean, you could end up with that. Another similar case like on Kings Highway with the Burton Subdivision, that's got a road going into it, so those houses are gonna face the road. And those last houses up against Kings Highway aren't gonna be, close to Kings Highway, they're gonna be pretty far set back.
Yeah, and in that case, there's actually no, I'm just making sure, yeah, there's no corridor buffer for those lots. I think that was because there was no room for a buffer. So again, it's something that you
But there was
guys-
no waiver there either then.
Waivers for that subdivision have already been approved. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Literally, it's sitting on my desk. But that has gotten preliminary consent for that subdivision.
But there was no buffer
I
applied, a corridor
think
buffer?
there's plantings on the property, and they've worked with the historic Lewis byways regarding the plantings on that property to provide that corridor aesthetic.
But it seems to me that if they were in compliance, they should have asked for a waiver, no?
Yeah, I just don't remember off the top of my head if they asked for a waiver. There were a number of waivers on that application, and I just can't remember if that one's one of them. It's been a few
I
months.
think street lighting was one, remember that?
And sidewalks and
There was a
lot.
right of way, and I think there were a number of those. So right now, I have a proposed recommendation to remove Pilot Town and Savannah. Are there any other streets you wanted to remove from that? Change any of the numbers?
I've got to say that with the lack of knowledge on this, that having the waiver provision there, rather than just eliminating all those very big, important streets here in town, just feels a little more cautious to me. But Melanie, I defer to you, though. You have more knowledge of this. But it does seem to me that the waiver does allow us to look at those individually and say, of course, in this case, a buffer didn't make sense.
Well, I guess I'm just concerned that it becomes one more hoop that the developer has to jump through that is, a risk he's got to take. And so the easier thing to do is to comply with the setback. And then we have a setback that really doesn't serve any purpose. I mean, look at Lewis Dairy. I mean, that's a perfect example. It's the end of the road. There's no other homes that are going to go along there, to the best of my knowledge. And so why should there be this big buffer setback just because it's a byway road? mean, as long as they locate the lots and the houses appropriately, I think it's fine.
They could comply and, you know, I think Deborah's point was they could have the lots face the road and you will, you know, end with a bunch of sides of houses on a street that is a very attractive street, you know? I mean, whereas with a waiver, you can, you know, it gives the commission flexibility to ensure things are fit in with the surrounding area.
And then again, you know, do we reduce the 75 and the 60-foot to be more consistent with, because I don't think there's much in the city that's set back that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
So do you
To me, it would make more sense to reduce that sum than to get rid of this completely and not, you know.
Well, the only thing that would be, you need to think about there is lands that are annexed in, that are on those corridors.
right, I would
Yeah,
leave
so-
New Road there, you know, and even Savannah for that purpose.
And, you know, it seems that, you know, going back to the established building line,
Tom, can you bring your mic down a little bit?
oh, sorry.
please? Thank you.
Going back to the established building line, in areas where there are no buildings, like the end of Pilot Town, it wouldn't be applicable anyway. Or in areas that are annexed and there's no established houses. And there it may be appropriate that the houses are back
Yeah.
further.
Exactly.
So it's a difficult topic, but I think, you know, you may want to consider in town where established building line would give you some streetscape continuity versus areas, I mean, established building line doesn't apply elsewhere.
And I know you were talking about properties that for potential annexation, and the county does have a buffer requirement along the edges, which is, I think, 20 to 25 feet. So they would have, if you were gonna look to reduce the buffer width, then the buffer maybe match or maybe a little bit more, something similar to the county. So when things do annex, then you've got that consistency and that aesthetic that I think you're all looking for.
Maybe meet in the middle at 50.
Yeah.
So you want to change A1, A2, and A3 all down from 75, 60, and 60 to 50? Okay. Any other comments?
No.
Okay,
That's it.
I've got them written down, so we'll make those changes. And I'll have verbiage for a potential motion. Figure we'll need that. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on the subdivision and land development regs?
Do you need a motion?
No, I wasn't sure if anybody else had any comments. Then I'm making notes on, if you get to a motion, I can provide what I've heard so far.
I just have one general comment, and that is that having read through it, first of all, my hat is off to those of you that labored over
Absolutely.
this, and the staff. I know there were some good contractor and staff assistants on this. As I read through this, it occurred to me anyway, as the novice new guy on the block, that if this had been in place when we were dealing with Fisher's Cove, that we, and I talked to Nancy about this earlier, we could have not stopped it, but I think we could have altered it considerably more than we could now with the current code. And that to me is really important and really success. And so I just think that this is a major step in the right direction.
Absolutely, this has, I think, been a Herculean project, and really Nancy's taken it through in record time, I think, also. So,
It's truly the whole committee and the folks working with us.
Nancy and the
so.
committee, yes. Yes, so we're very grateful for your hard work. Okay, can I move on? All right. So now we need an update on the comprehensive five-year plan.
Oh, did you want to make a motion for a recommendation to mayor and council?
Okay, so could I get a motion for an action here?
I think Anne Marie has, or Anne Marie, I think Janelle has the language that would incorporate the recommendations that the revisions you've made this evening.
So what I'm hearing is that you want to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance with the following revisions: that line 904 be revised to state application checklist and is sufficient, is in sufficient form for further review. That line 2187-75 be reduced to 50, 2190, the number 60 be reduced to 50, 2194, 60 be reduced to 40, and then Nancy, you've got the language for I want to call it for
Yes,
open
let me-
space.
I didn't want to call it 4, I wanted to call it, let me go to page 50 here. 49, 1 second. I'm suggesting that at line 2171, that we add, residential buffers shall be included in open space and shall not be located on individual lots. And that would be line 2171.
And that could be somebody's motion if they so choose.
Perhaps, since this is Nancy's effort, you'd give her the generosity of allowing her to move that motion. All you need to say is "so moved," Nancy.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second
That's a
that.
whole lot easier than working on this had been.
Okay, do we vote on this then?
Yep.
Yes, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous vote in favor.
Congratulations, Nancy, and subcommittee group.
Nancy, mostly Nancy.
On to city council.
Okay, comp plan update.
So, joining us tonight via Zoom is Savannah Edwards with the Rossi Transportation Group. She is one of the team members, so we wanted to introduce you to her. So Julian, if you don't mind bringing her up so the commission can meet her. And then she's gonna give a little bit of an overview. I know Anne Marie sent out a save the date, because our first step is going to be a public workshop based on the 5 chapters that you and council identified as making changes. So she's gonna give an update of kind of what she's thinking for the interactive public workshop. And I know we're looking for volunteers to staff some tables, if anybody's interested. So Savannah is here and she's got a little presentation to go over, and then we're happy to answer any questions as we get rolling.
Thank you, Janelle. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all virtually. I have worked with a couple of you, I believe, in the past, a couple of years ago when I was providing some on-site support at the city. But really excited to be back and working with you all on just reviewing the comprehensive plan with the 5-year time frame review, and hopefully setting up some good goals so that when the city is ready to revisit the comp plan for a full rewrite, it'll be seamless, really. So I just wanted to give you all some background. My company is Rossi Group. We are a full-service engineering, planning, and inspection consulting firm. It is a woman-owned disadvantaged business enterprise and was started in 2015 in Hunt Valley, Maryland. We actually opened up our Dover office in September of 2021. So we're still relatively new in the area, and great for you all because you're really at the forefront of our focus at this point in time. Again, a diverse range of services. The firm started with a focus on transportation, but as we've opened up the Dover office, we've been expanding into more long-range planning issues, which I have more of a personal background in. So we use a holistic approach to all of our engineering and sustainable community-based solutions. And our staff is full of knowledge and expertise to meet any challenge on time and especially on budget. So our team for this particular project, Mark Cote, who unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, is our project manager. He works with me in the Dover office. Myself, I will be your main point of contact throughout this process, though. I'm planning on attending the next several planning commission meetings. I have been watching already some of your meetings that have been going on since you guys started talking last November about doing the update. In addition, we have some great support. Carter Hyde, one of our PEs, and he also has a background in CCM, stormwater design and engineering. And Alexis Morris is a certified environmental planner. She really has a passion for environmental issues and a good background in historic resources as well. And I should say for myself, I have been working a lot in southern Delaware and Sussex County. I've done comp plan updates for Ocean View, Millsboro, Dagsboro, Fenwick Island, Frankfurt, worked with the city of Rehoboth Beach on a number of issues. Most recently, we did a streetscape plan, Rossi Group, and Alexis Morris really did a lot of that work. And Rehoboth was really happy with the product. So we're fortunate to have that, and I think they're going to be working on to implementing it very soon. This is what you guys are interested in. This is the schedule that we have laid out for the comp plan update. We need to submit to the state by the beginning of October to meet our deadlines. We don't think we'll have a problem doing that, though. There's been a good schedule laid out so that each of those white dots that you see will have attendance at a meeting with you all. So we're going to stay engaged with you guys on a monthly basis at the very minimum, but hoping even more feedback as, you know, I really look to work with any of you that are interested in getting more involved with this process. We had scoped out to possibly start in February, but really got everything kicked off in March. Nonetheless, we're still on schedule, and as you guys can see, we're in that background stage right now, pulling together some updated demographic information. Each of our team members has taken on their respective areas and started diving into the comprehensive plan, looking at the recommendations that you guys and City Council made on that November 30th meeting, and we're starting to pull together materials for our public workshop. So that is the next big thing that's going to be coming up. Mark your calendars. I think Janelle already sent out an email. Tuesday, April 26th, 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We'll be having the public workshop at the Rollins Center. This main focus is in person, but we will offer an alternate and equal virtual component. So we'll have some interactive surveying things online that we can get the same exact kind of feedback that people will be providing in person. So we are looking for people to help out with this effort. In past comprehensive planning efforts that I've done, if we have engagement from the city, it's led to a really positive outcome, where at the end we don't have issues with adoption. And so with our crunch schedule, we really like that. We'd like you guys to also encourage all your neighbors to come out and give us their feedback, because we know that's paramount. So the types of things, we'll probably be looking for a couple people to maybe be greeters at the door, have a sign-up sheet, direct people where to go, where there are restrooms, possibly someone to float around the room and see if the station masters or, the technical staff that will be going over the different issues like environmental considerations, making sure, do they need any support, helping move people along in the room and make sure that they each visit all of the stations to get feedback. It'll be a drop-by kind of design, where people are not expected to come for all 3 hours, but they can come at the beginning of it if they want, they can come at the end. We'll have flyers to give them a general idea of what the comprehensive plan is, some material that they can read before engaging in each of the topic areas. And then each of those stations, like I said, we're starting to pull them out right now. And by next LPC meeting, I will have more materials for you guys to actually see what questions we'll be asking them. But think kind of things like red, yellow, green, sticky dot situations where red means you don't like what you're seeing, green means you like it, and yellow you're neutral. And we can ask about different issues such as wetland buffers versus hard gray infrastructure for stormwater management kind of issues, and get a general picture of how people feel about those. So these are the 5 topic areas, the focus areas that you guys, out of the conversations and out of the scoping exercise, decided that really need to be focused on. So this is what we will have: one station set up for each of these chapters with a number of questions that we'll be asking people. And you can see in the org chart, each member of the team, what area they will be responsible for. And this is just the final last slide, general. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Savannah, thank you. Would it be possible for you to forward that schedule to us? Because it was not legible on the screen, unfortunately.
Sorry, yeah, too many words, but definitely I can forward that. And it was included in our RFP. I don't know if that's been shared with the commission at all, but happy to forward this.
But we'll get them just the separate schedule, if you don't mind, Savannah. Thank you.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
I think Nancy had her hand up.
I had a question.
Nancy, yes.
You listed historical cultural affairs as one of the items. When we had the workshop on planning for this, and we looked at these various areas to identify which areas that we thought were the most important to focus on. This was one where the definition of what was under it was kind of unusual, let's say. And I'm just wondering what you're thinking of covering in that, since the current plan in terms of actions under that area, and maybe someone else can remember what it was, but I can remember it seemed totally unrelated to historical and cultural affairs.
I think it was combining CARC and H Park to create H Park, and that was the only recommendation for that chapter. So I know we did provide. Remember, we did all of those comments. All of that has been provided to the Rossi group because they asked me for homework, so I provided that information. So I think we'll be looking at what you guys have said. These are things we should be looking at for those chapters. And then we'll be kind of like, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, I apologize. But I think we'll be looking at those and seeing and kind of going, okay, this is what council and commission said, and, getting the feedback of, are these the right ways to go? Then we can take those and turn them into the policies and recommendations for the comp plan.
Yeah, one suggestion I recall Mayor Becker had made was that UD had, worked with the town to catalog a lot of properties already within the city. So bringing out those things, somewhat of managing expectations with the review is it is going to be an addendum to the current comprehensive plan. It won't be a rewrite. So half of it is going to be saying this is what the town has accomplished over the past 5 years. With that in mind, the goals that they haven't accomplished yet, are they still appropriate?
And then perhaps because I'm on Zoom, I could see some of the items on the Gantt chart or work plan. And there's mention there of consulting with the committee. Who are the members of the committee and what's its role relative to the planning commission?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So last Friday, I met with Janelle and Anne Marie to start talking about our kickoff process. And that's what we need to refine exactly. I'm interested to hear back after tonight, who is interested in working on the comprehensive plan from Planning Commission, and then possibly having a follow-up conversation with Melanie as the chair right now. That's the only person that I could have flagged myself for someone to meet with. And I would like to work with the committee on a virtual meeting kind of basis, because I'm in a different area of the state and perhaps we won't need to have as much work as went into like the subdivision code rewrite. But I would like to keep engaged with at least a couple of members from the Planning Commission, just to give feedback on those materials for like the public workshop as we're refining, since you guys meet on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Savannah? Okay, we look forward to working with you.
Awesome,
Any
thank you
volunteers
guys.
at the moment? Any volunteers?
Actually, I will ask a question. Is what exactly will be the scope and the focus of what LPC members would be doing?
At the public workshop?
Or the committee?
No, on the committee.
The whole
Volunteers.
process,
Oh,
yeah.
the committee. Sure. So Joe might be able to add some insight. I think, Joe, you were on one of my committees last time, but
Do tell
Yeah,
us,
forever,
Joe.
yeah. Okay.
I'm noticing Joe hasn't
last time when
volunteered.
we were implementing the comprehensive plan, we met about on a bi-weekly basis. Before we would meet, I would prepare a memo that gave a rundown of the chapter, and then it offered, based on the chapter, here's some bullets of what goals are out there. Maybe a sub-bullet of how the zoning code doesn't quite match up, maybe a sub-bullet of this is what has already been accomplished, but a memo would be put together to guide you guys through the conversation. And I think there were 3 committee members that we started out with, and then it eventually got down to 2. But the 3 of us would sit and talk about each of those concepts and what recommendation we would be wanting to bring to the Planning Commission then at the next meeting.
Okay, and since this is a review as opposed to a rewrite, kind of for putting in those hours, and what is the anticipated outcome?
So the anticipated outcome is, is it okay, Savannah? 'Cause
Yeah, you can start out.
What we're looking to is provide an addendum. So like, not a full comp plan, but for those 5 chapters, we're gonna beef up or make some changes to those recommendations and those policies based on what we have heard from both you and council at this point.
Okay,
So that's what so the eventual outcome is gonna be new goals, new recommendations for those chapters. Like the overall, narrative really isn't changing. It's that recommendation goals is really what we heard needs to change. So that's what we're gonna be kind of focusing on.
so I'm just trying to get a better grasp of this. So, you always hear about how the comp plan has the force of the law. And so are we actually changing the comp plan? Are we making recommendations for the total rewrite?
No, we are changing the comp plan
Okay.
with an addendum to the comp plan going, these 5 chapters, we're making changes to that. And it's really the implementation portion of the chapter, which is the recommendations, the goals, which is, again, like the historic and cultural affairs. The recommendation was combined to create H-Park. Okay, well, you guys have said, I think we should have some more goals and recommendations in that chapter. So that's what we're looking to do. And like some of the other chapters, it's like, well, those don't seem to match how the city's going anymore. So let's fix those. So we're gonna put like like a mini plan. It's an addendum for just based on those 5 chapters of, you know, what should the new, like when we did the subdivision code, the intent. So we're gonna look at the intent and then what are, you know, what's the code need to be? So what are the recommendations and goals for that intent for the overall chapter? Does that help?
Yeah,
And which are the 5 chapters?
I'm sorry?
Which are the 5 chapters?
So, housing, annexation, environmental, utilities, and
Historic.
historic. Those are the 5 chapters.
Janelle, are these ones when we had the meeting with city council, mayor and city council, where we discussed all these? Is that what came out of that? Is that correct?
That's what came out of it, was those were the 5 chapters that we needed to focus on and make, potentially some changes to.
Okay, and I'm sorry for all the questions, but looking at it kind of from a more macro point of view, is this to be aspirational, or is the goal to make it further, you know, make it bring things in alignment?
So some
I think
things are,
both.
yes.
You know, like, for example, you guys were earlier talking about the tree ordinance. Well, that's already a recommendation, I believe, in the comprehensive plan to adopt a tree ordinance in town. Well, why hasn't it been discussed yet?
Yeah.
So bringing more detail, you know, who are the key players? What can we highlight to actually make it easier for you guys to work on over the next few years?
Yeah. Janelle, I'd like to volunteer, but only if the word sustainable isn't every other word, okay? So,
Understood, and I believe Nancy had stated she wanted to be interested in being on the committee.
I also would like to throw my hat in.
Can I ask one more question? Unless, maybe there are more volunteers, but, and as someone who wasn't around when the last one was done, I'm not really completely clear on the process in terms of whether the comprehensive plan is something that the planning commission is recommending then to city council, or is it something that there's kind of cross participation from different levels of government in, and then it goes to city council, or?
Sure. So when I send out the schedule, it'll definitely be clear. You can kind of look at that a little bit more. We will first have a public hearing with Planning Commission. So you guys, over a series of meetings, I think I've scoped out May, June, and July for us to work on drafting this, pulling all the ideas and feedback together from that April public workshop. And then in August, we will be having the public hearing. At the end of that, you all will be recommending it for adoption by mayor and city council. Simultaneously, we will be submitting it to the state at that point for plus adoption. Hopefully, if we can wrap up the process with Planning Commission a little bit earlier, that'll give us even more wiggle room to get feedback from the state. Every state department looks at it in the plus process. And in that process, we also have to send it to Sussex County, Rehoboth Beach, and Henlopen and Acres, our neighboring communities. Just typically, I don't get a lot back from the neighboring communities. They said, we looked at it, it was good. But we do take that into consideration.
And we will also be providing updates, staff will be providing updates to mayor and council as, on the work that's being done by the planning commission. Because we want to make sure everybody's kept in the loop and working together.
So the end product will be, in those 5 areas, addendums that will be added to the existing. It will not be replacing the existing.
Correct.
So can we make deletions to the okay.
What were
Okay.
the 5 chapters again?
Housing, annexation, historical, utilities, and the environment.
Janelle, this is probably the wrong thing to do, but yeah, I'll volunteer. If 4 isn't too many, if 3 is adequate, then I can.
Is that okay with you, Savannah?
No, that's fine with me.
And it's not a
And
quorum
that way,
of the commission, so we're good.
I think it may be good, 'cause August, a lot of us may be out of pocket anyway, so we can cover for each other.
okay.
And since one of the chapters is utilities, has the Board of Public Works been read into this yet?
I know
No,
I've
but-
talked to Robin and Austin, so we're gonna be reaching out, doing some more yes, thank you, outreach.
Okay.
Outreach to them, especially on that chapter.
Good, because last time.
No, we wanna make sure everybody
I was
is,
involved with the last one, and there was not a lot of crosstalk between the
nope,
two.
we're taking, as Savannah pointed out, a more holistic approach, which is what her group does.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and yeah, we had talked about that on Friday, got them on as stakeholders to engage. If there's any other people like that you all think of, that you think that we should incorporate in this process, let us know.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, issues? Okay, thank you, Savannah.
Thanks, bye.
Okay, let's move on to new business. First item being election of a vice chairperson. For this, I would like to nominate Nancy Stacey to the position.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I guess you can nominate. Typically, the chair doesn't nominate, it takes nominations, but you're not prohibited from doing it, so.
Okay.
But if somebody else wants to make that nomination, it would be a little bit cleaner record.
I would like to, it's Joe Hockner, I'd like to nominate Nancy Stacy to be a vice chairman.
I second that.
Okay. So now we take a vote.
If there's no other nominations, but to be clear, under your bylaws, you have to have a majority of the entire planning commission vote to implement a new vice chair or any officer, actually. So you need, everybody that's here tonight needs to vote in the affirmative for Nancy to be put into the vice chair. Just, not putting any weight on your shoulders, but.
So any one person is undermined it.
Right, and Nancy needs to vote, and there's no problem with Ms. Stacy voting.
This Joe.
Okay, so let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
You've got a new vice
Any
chair?
abstained? No? Okay, so it's unanimous.
Congratulations, Nancy.
Just made it in.
That's right. If I hadn't voted.
Are you reconsidering?
Okay, the next item is the review, discussion, and possible recommendation to mayor and city council regarding MS-1-22 Lands of RUMCO LLC for a minor subdivision. The minor subdivision is to create one new parcel of land at 512 DuPont Avenue. The property is zoned R4. The tax parcel is 335-8.07-32.00.
So as you just stated, it's a minor subdivision. They want to take the existing parcel of land to create one new parcel. You will note that it is smaller than normal because this actually does fall within what is referred to as the Burton Subdivision. So the Burton Subdivision allows for a 4,000 square foot lot, and they are providing one 4,000 square foot lot and one 4,500 square foot lot. They are complying with the lot width. One will be 40, one will be 45. The minimum is 40. The lot depth, the minimum is 75, and they're actually providing 100.
He's lost.
So, and then, of course, they'll comply with the building height. There is an established building line, which will be 14.3 feet. And then the property is not located within the floodplain. It's being currently served by the Lewis Board of Public Works, and notices were sent to the property owners within 100 feet. And I would, if you are looking to recommend approval of this, I would note maybe a potential condition is that all the structures shall be removed prior to the recordation of the plan, because there is currently a house, and you can't put a property line in the middle of a house. So we would recommend that a condition of approval be that the building be removed prior to recordation of the plan.
I also, probably all noticed that, but there looks like there's additional outbuildings as well.
Garage.
Yeah, if you want to make the recommendation that all of the structures be removed from the property, that you have that ability.
Janelle, can you give us any background on the Burton subdivision for those of us who are not familiar with what the Burton area is?
So the Burton subdivision is an older portion of the town that just creates where the majority of the lots were originally created. They were much smaller lots. They're 4,000 square foot lots. We're typically in the R4, they're 5,000 square foot lots. So in these, what is called the Burton subdivision, because this parcel is actually originally part of the Johnson subdivision, but holistically, the area is called the Burton subdivision because that's the area where there's just historically smaller lots that are around 4,000 square feet. So the city recognized that as a district where, smaller lots made sense. The smaller lots already existed.
Can I ask a question about the R4? So knowing kind of what's around the corner, and could it theoretically become a duplex under the R4 here?
That would be a conditional use, and that would come before the planning commission for consideration.
Because there is one on Johnson, right?
Yeah, but if it's within 600 feet, it could not. So if that one on Johnson is within 600 feet of this property, it could not. Because that is the requirement that there's a 600-foot separation distance.
Do you have any idea what the extent of the Burton's area is?
Oh, I did at one point. I know this is the very edge because then you end up in the school district, and George H.P. Smith Park is also is on the other side of DuPont Avenue. This kind of goes to where, because it doesn't go all the way into the historic district. I'm trying to think.
Doesn't it go, I thought it went, because
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
I thought it went to Fourth Street, like, Fourth Street, the other side of the street from Ship Carpenter.
Yeah, I always understood it was Burton to Park to DuPont
Yeah.
and Johnson, but to 4th Street, like Nancy's saying, that sort of square area there with DuPont, the prong of DuPont being part of it as well.
And, most of it has already, there are very few lots these days that already, that are left for subdivision or even redevelopment.
Correct. The majority of the
'Cause
lots
especially
are.
redevelopment's probably the wrong
Right.
word.
So the Burton subdivision means, so I knew I could find it somewhere, means Burton subdivision, which includes that area bounded by West 4th Street, Park Avenue, Johnson Street, and Burton Avenue, being on both sides of Burton Avenue, Painter Avenue, DuPont Avenue, Park Avenue, and Johnson Street, lying and being on the south side of West 4th Street between Park and Burton Avenue.
Not bad.
That is where the Burton subdivision is. And again, it's just been historically much smaller lots. There are very few lots, I think, left in this area that could be, I mean, there might be some larger lots, but there are not too many that are at least 80 feet wide and with 8,000 square feet to be further subdivided.
Well, it seems on that particular block, the lots are bigger.
Yes, but the original plat, if you read the deed, it's like two parcels originally put together, so it's like, it was originally, like, it'll say it's like, you know, Lot A and Lot B, and there are like Lot A and Part B and part of Lot C, like half of Lot C. That's how you get like the 85 foot, because they would have been originally 40-foot lots.
And I guess just, you know, I'm not saying anything against this, but, you know, or opposing this, but I do want to say that you know, we can all envision what this will happen here, as has been happening throughout the Burton subdivision. I don't think it's really in alignment with the original zoning intents of what the Burton subdivision was, but historically, it's kind of been a race back there, and that's what it is. And some would say unfortunate.
The Burton subdivision dates back to when? Just give us a guess.
So these lots actually go back to the 1950s, because I found the Johnson subdivision in the 1950s. The formal, what we consider this Burton subdivision, I believe I started seeing references in the last 20 years as the formal name of that area, but I think historically it had been called that. We just formalized it by saying these are the streets that create that within the last, you know, decade or so. But it historically had, you know, some significance for being smaller lots.
So it's 60 or 70 years old then. if it's
Yeah,
1950s, yes.
this one, because somebody kept calling and it's like, well, where's the Burton subdivision? I'm like, well, it technically is platted. It was part of the Johnson subdivision that this then became part of what we now refer to as the Burton subdivision.
So if anything, we're bringing this area up to date, in a matter of buildings and sizes and things like that, so. And that's, I don't want to say progress, but that's how we develop.
Now, are the setbacks reduced as well as the lot sizes?
The setbacks are still 8 feet. So even for the only thing that's reduced, because I actually have it up right now, setbacks are, for the R4 is a minimum EBL, or an EBL, so no matter where you go in R4, EBL, and if there's no EBL, then it's 15. In this case, the EBL is 14.3. The side yard's 8, the rear yard's 15, and everything else is the same, whether or not you're in or out of the Burton subdivision.
Right.
It's just the lot width and the lot size that are reduced from 50 feet and 5,000 square feet down to 40 feet and 4,000 square feet. The depth of 75 is still the same. The height is still the same, nothing else. The only difference is the street frontage, which goes from 50 to 40, and the lot area that goes from 5 to 4,000 square feet. That's the only difference between the two. And the lot width is 40 feet, yep. Those are the only three differences between a normal subdivision, normal lot, other lots in the R4, and lots within the Burton subdivision.
So this is right around the corner from me. It's literally probably 150 yards from my home. And I know the neighbors on the corner, they just put up a house on the adjacent lot to this that, in my view, is enormous. It's very tall, very white, very few windows. It does seem, I've got to agree with Deb, it does seem a little out of character from what the rest of the neighborhood was. But You know, I know that the one woman who has bought one of these plots does not intend to build a home on it for some time. But it does seem to be in compliance.
You mean these particular,
2 lots.
these 2 lots? Okay.
But you sort of have to assume it will be one.
I think the house adjacent to it has been there for quite a while. I think you're thinking perhaps of a different house?
No, this is right near,
On
Paul-
Johnson?
Paul and Mitzi's house, right next door to them.
No, this will be up across from George H.P. Smith Park.
Across from the parking lot.
With the
and
brown
across
shake
the
house.
parking lot,
I'm sorry.
And adjacent to that open field by the,
thought it
what
was
used to be the
right on.
consortia
No,
school.
This is the only brown cedar shake house in the neighborhood there.
With
Yeah.
outbuildings,
Yeah.
with significant outbuildings.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
again,
Maybe it's the
as long as the house complies with setbacks and in bulk standards, it can look as modern or historic as the property owner wants it to look.
Right.
So this is not within the historic district?
This is not within the historic district now.
No, and it's really, it's too late to have any commentary with the Burton subdivision. I would just say that now we do have, pardon me for not getting the exact name of the committee, but the African American Heritage Commission. If we'd had that 20 years ago, it probably would have been really great to have had that be sort of an approval for the Burton subdivision lot by lot. But, that train's long since left the station. I just felt I should say something.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Hearing none, does anyone care to make a motion?
I would like to move that we recommend to Mayor and City Council approval of the survey minor subdivision plan here for the site at tax map number 3-35-8.07-32, lot number 3 and 4 of the subdivision, with the condition that all houses and outbuildings be removed from the site.
Would that be prior to recordation of the subdivision plan?
Just what I was about to say, yes.
Thank you, I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Okay.
So, Madam Chair, when you vote, since this is a land use application, please give some reasons for why you're voting the way you're voting. Something as simple as it's compliant with the code is sufficient.
Certainly.
Joe Hockner, I'd like to vote yes. Looking at the survey plan, it meets all requirements for the front side. It will meet the requirements for front side setbacks, and it's a good site. Thank you.
Deborah?
I would also vote yes. It meets the requirements.
Okay. Bob?
I'll vote yes, unenthusiastically, but it meets the requirements, and so this commission really has no choice.
Okay.
I'll vote yes because it meets the requirements.
Okay.
I will vote yes because it meets the requirements.
And I would vote yes also for the same reasons.
You've also got
Nancy.
your
And-
vice chair.
Nancy? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I vote yes because it's compliant with it meets all of the requirements.
Thank you.
Okay. So recommendation passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we move to reports. The Annexation Committee has not met. We have not made any further amendments to what we have proposed to date, but I will be making a presentation to the City Council in April. Subdivision Code Subcommittee. I think we've heard.
I just
Nancy?
put that on there just in case Nancy wanted to get the group back together to do any final,
Yeah, I mean,
I can't think.
I'd suggest that the subdivision subcommittee have one final meeting to really, make sure we get down our list of things that we think that we think could benefit from being looked at in the future.
Great, okay. Glenn, anything to report?
I suspect you all were aware of it, but Monday's meeting with City Council went late, so if you didn't stay up and watch it, they did vote to approve the site plan for the 2 White Bucks applications, one at the corner of Savannah and Cape Antelope, and the other one, the 2 Dips property. And they also adopted an ordinance dealing with museum exhibitions. That's all I have.
Liaisons, who's that?
Joe?
Sorry, Joe.
Yes, I'm the liaison for H-Park, and they weren't entirely happy with what Mayor and City Council was proposing for the, well, we read all about it, and I had the first instance of abstaining from a vote. I'm between a rock and a hard place, so I abstained from my first vote at H-Park.
Okay, any other things from the commissioners? Nancy? Anything further?
No.
Okay. Janelle, anything?
Nope, just that those of you who've just volunteered to be on the comp plan committee, we will be in contact with you in getting those meetings together. So thank you.
Okay, and Anne Marie has left?
So no further update.
Okay. So the next item is minutes from the February 16th meeting. The regular meeting first. Any amendments, any corrections to the meeting minutes? Nancy?
I do. I have one correction on, in the minutes, the report from the subcommittees, the report for D1, Annexation Subcommittee, and the report for D2, Subdivision Code Subcommittee, got reversed somehow. So one said there was a public hearing held, that should be with the subdivision, had the public hearing, and no discussion tonight would be with the annexation.
Okay, thank you. And the minutes from the public hearing, any comments, corrections?
Me again.
Nancy? Yes.
This is very minor. The second bullet on, I believe it's the second page, it refers to that we rewrote it around quote, first intent, end quote, and it should just be intent, okay?
Okay. Thank you. And that's it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Any movement for adjournment?
You
Motion?
didn't adopt the minutes yet. You've made some corrections to them, but you need a motion to adopt. You can adopt them all at once if you want, so,
And as amended.
as amended.
Okay. Does anyone make a motion to move the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. And now can I ask for a motion for adjournment?
So moved?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That you'll always get unanimous.
Yeah, totally.
You've got to be fast to get in on that.
Now, I may have told different people this, but everybody know how to select a volunteer? That's it. If you have a pulse, you can do it.